Okay. You guys are live on YouTube.
Cool.
There's 3 screens.
You get multi-angled Bill on the screen too.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Multi-angle. Yeah, that's true. Not bad lighting. Multi-angled Bill. Yeah. That way, when I'm looking at chat and stuff, like, I hate being blind. I hate being blind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Nice.
tough with Zoom.
Yeah, at least I can see what they see, and I can see people who are willing to keep their cameras on. And this is like it. I had a busy week. This is the last thing, other than our meeting tomorrow.
You know, Matt, another thing I really want to try, which I see Databricks is doing almost every other week, is doing live streaming on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've never used LinkedIn's live stream.
They have like 140 people every time.
Wow, that's really good. Postman was also trying for a while. They were also trying Twitch and was working quite well for them, I believe.
Twitch, because I saw, you know, who did Twitch? Apollo.
Yeah,
it was okay. Like our old, the previous one, Michael, joined the Twitch live streaming. I think it's okay.
I'm actually interested in experimenting with these Twitter Spaces, where you just get on a conversation. Like I joined one day, and I thought it was really, everybody's on Twitter already, you know? So just to say, hey, for the next hour, if you want to discuss this, jump online. Super interesting.
yeah,
that's true.
And impromptu stuff. People love jumping into impromptu stuff, especially if you try to schedule something ahead of time. It's tough to do, but if you find a few people that won't have a break in their workday or something, they can jump in. I think that's great.
I want to try to schedule though, like my calendar sucks, but imagine like 12 p.m. every Wednesday, jump online with Bill and have a conversation.
That's what I did previously at Tyke. I ran a hangout every single Wednesday at 3 p.m. and we had a pretty good turnout for it. And we didn't even really pick a subject. Just everyone jumped in. Hey, what are you working on? And then it always found some way to fill the entire hour, and everyone learned some stuff. So yeah, it's a good idea.
You know what? That's excellent skill sets then, Matt, because this role you need the ability to pivot and to consume what's coming at you and push it back. And most people don't know how to do that because they're stuck behind slide decks.
I also teach at the college here in town, and being in front of 150 angsty students can get you, into that mindset pretty easily. So I'm usually pretty good at, the impromptu stuff.
Are you have Go programming skills?
I do not. My stack generally tends to be, large enterprise oriented. So Java, Node, React, Angular, branched into GraphQL about a year ago type of stuff. But Go has not been on the radar, but that's, I know that I'm going to have to get into it being here. So.
All right, cool. This is good. We can do some damage together, Matt.
I think so.
Yeah, I really don't know what I want to do with this group just yet, but I want to log into the cloud and show them the UI. I'm not that familiar with it, so I may ask you to point some things out there. Then I'm going to take Insomnia, connect to it. And then I may or may not run some GraphQL from there, and then I may or may not just quickly write a little Go program that hack it from code I have in Travel and see where we are now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I do have a side project that leverages the cloud environment. So relatively familiar with it, although I haven't been on it in like 3 weeks, and I know that we've made some updates to the UI. as I've heard from my other folks that I work with on this project. So,
but you know what? One of the things I want to show people also is not being prepared, like, and stress that. I haven't been on that website in 3 weeks. I don't know what we're going to find.
yeah,
And I think it's important for Xenia and Dgraph to look at people like you and me who have experience if we're struggling or where we're struggling and what we're struggling with. Because
yeah.
when things look too polished, it's
Agreed. And you know what? When you try to polish it, especially in a cloud environment, something usually blows up, as I've learned the hard way many times.
Yeah.
So
people like to see you struggle and fail every once in a while because it makes them feel like, okay, I'm not the only one.
yeah.
I know you're not the only one.
Yeah, we at Tyke with our API gateway, it was funny because we'd always say, always run it on Docker. If you run it on cloud, you might run into an anomaly, and then you're gonna get, I still ran it on cloud all the time, and then had to show people workarounds. But yeah, super interesting when you run into stuff. People love seeing how you troubleshoot it too.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, by the way, Bill and Matt, we have 6 watching on YouTube already. So and we are 1.
You know what? I forgot we were live, dude.
Yes,
Oh,
we have 1 minute before we start. Okay.
When I started I just finished a talk, and I was the one who had to start Zoom, which I never do. So I turned the camera off, but I realized that the mute button wasn't set because I never do these things. I have a whole studio. Thank God I was alone. I don't think I said anything in between all of that, or at least maybe not talking to myself. I need like big signs all over the house. Hey, video off. What?
I did the same thing at a conference a few months back where they're like, oh, we are live right now. You're just in backstage, but they can see you. I'm like, oh, I thought backstage meant they couldn't see me. Like, no, they can see you.
Totally forgot we were live because I don't see anybody in the Zoom. And
we're about to go live in Zoom now. Okay. And Bill, do you want to turn down your other camera, or you want to have 2?
No, I'm all about angles here now.
He wants
Okay.
to. He wants to
starting.
say a joke and then look at the other camera for the reaction. Is what he's looking for. Exactly.
Okay. Starting.
I don't know why I never turned the other camera off, honestly. I don't know what people look at anyway. So I'm blind. You can see that I have long hair. People will see me with the hat and they think I'm bald. And then they're like, what? What do you do? Right? Most people wear a hat a lot. They're like bald, right?
That's a thing that I'm very used to.
You should be wearing a hat.
Damn it. I know. Well, Bill, I'll let you take the intro, and then
is Xenia not going to take the intro because we can't see her? I can take the intro. We have 11 people. Yeah, I can see that right there. But this is more of a webinar, right? So we only see ourselves here, which is
exactly.
Which is fine. Okay, so I guess we should start here. My name is Bill Kennedy, and I really appreciate anybody who's taking the time right now to hang out with me and Matt Tanner. Matt Tanner is an engineer over there at Dgraph, and I'm just a friend who is learning the technology and trying to figure out how it applies to all the software that we're all building. And the more I learn, the more excited I get about the technology. In fact, Matt, you just started. Like, what brought you to Dgraph, actually?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of background on it, actually, because I think it's important to explain. So I actually have a side project that leverages Dgraph, and loved the product so much that decided, hey, I might have some skills that I can bring to Dgraph, and here I am. So I'm actually, a user as well as someone now working at Dgraph and trying to help, make the product better for everyone who's on the call.
So the idea here is that Matt and I are going to spend the next couple of months on these types of calls, trying to show off little things. Matt and I are going to almost purposely not prepare for these calls. That way, I want you to experience some of the things that you might be experiencing as you come into Dgraph. We're not going to prepare too heavily. We'll have a plan of attack, but we want to see where it goes. I don't know if people can ask questions to us because well, maybe on the Zoom, right?
So they should be on the Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, I like using the chat for questions. It makes it a little easier for me to just look at the chat. So like Marnie just said, yes. So if you have a question as we're going through, put it on the chat. I have another monitor over here and I'll let you know that I see your question and then we'll figure out when to answer that question as well. Okay, just so we can keep a flow. We're gonna go for an hour. So it's half past the hour here in Miami. I'm gonna get going. So I thought this month it might be fun to go back and look at the Dgraph Cloud. Originally that product was called Slash, I think, and then they changed it over to Dgraph Cloud. A lot of the work that I've been doing and learning has been running a local version of Dgraph using their Dockerized images in a Kubernetes environment named Kind. And I'll share a little bit the travel project again for those of you who haven't seen it before. The problem right now is the travel project works great in my local Kubernetes environment, but I'm using some features like upserts that haven't been migrated to the cloud version of Dgraph just yet. So I can't run this thing against the cloud, though it's all set up to do so. But that's okay. For this hour, what I wanted to do is log into the cloud UI, kind of explore that again, because I don't know what's there. I remember seeing a talk last month where there's some crazy stuff going on in there. Let's see if we can then connect a local, my Insomnia to that, run a couple of schema things like that, make sure it works. And then depending on the time we have and the questions that are being asked, maybe I'll even just hack a small Go program to show you some of that. But for those of you that are here, I also want you and your questions to kind of guide a little bit of where we go. That's why I don't want things to be too rigid. There's no slide deck here. Matt and I, we like to live on the edge. So no slide deck here. So you actually, remember Netflix had that TV show where you were supposed to be able to decide at certain points the direction that the show, I thought it was a failure, to be honest with you. But this is it. This is it. Okay. And you're going to be using Flutter and Dart, which is fantastic because really what you need is GraphQL, and more support can be put into GraphQL over time. So Matt and I will talk about that in future as well. So if you got a good GraphQL client for Dart, you're going to be in really good shape. Now, I'm not going to go into architecture, design kind of stuff like that in this. We're going to kind of stick with cloud and being able to talk to it. So I'm going to share my screen. And you see a terminal window, which is not what I want just yet. Okay. So you're seeing the repo with the Go project with a browser-based UI for solving a problem using Dgraph. And I expect Matt, who's a Java node guru, to have a project like this as well. I think having projects that people can look and steal code from is really some of the best material out there for people. Now that we know we've got some Flutter developers here, Matt, we're going to have to get some Flutter examples.
It's on the docket. It is on the docket.
It would be cool maybe to have a Flutter app that handles the UI for this. So Marnie, I want you to take my email address here. Oh yeah, I got to talk to Marnie here. We got to talk about that, man. Well, see, maybe if you're trying to experiment with some Flutter, this is a good project to kind of experiment with. So that could be interesting. Anyway, this is not what I want to go. I'm going to do a search. I'm going to go to the dgraph.io, which really helps if you spell it right. dgraph.io, right? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I went to the dgraph.io website there, and they've done a lot of changes to the website, which from my perspective is good. Documentation is really, really hard, and they're They're improving a lot of it right now. And I'm assuming, Matt, you're going to help with some of that as well.
Yep. I
But
will.
and these are good questions, Matt. So if you see questions like how far away is the storage, we could talk about. I think all this is in Amazon, right? You get to choose. You even get to choose your Amazon kind of location.
Yep. Yep. And I believe that we'll be, slowly scaling out to other cloud providers as well over the next little while.
Yeah. So good. Okay. So you see that get Dgraph Cloud button right there. I'm gonna click on that, and we get to this kind of login over here now. Because I was one of the early people playing on Dgraph Cloud. I kind of have an account already. It's funny. I really try to stay away from using like Google and GitHub. I hate when a website forces you to choose one of those accounts. So luckily I didn't have to do that here, and you can create your own account here. So life is good for me. I'm gonna log in here. And you can see we have this dashboard. And good, we have, are you the one, the Dgraph Labs messaging there? Or is that coming from Zenny or something like that?
That would be from Zenny.
Okay, perfect. So Zenny also working over there at Dgraph. Thank you for helping us with some of those questions there. Okay, so here's the dashboard, right? Which is, I've had a database out there for a little bit, and you can see that I'm not doing much on it at all here. But what I love about the UI in that last kind of presentation that I saw is I don't have to build, I don't have to build my own kind of administrating website anymore. Like there's so much here that I get to just kind of leverage on the database. So even here, like I could already kind of look at the schema that I have in there. There's the GraphQL schema. I'm going to probably clear that schema and we'll maybe deploy a new one. Look at that there, access, interesting. So I've got all that. This is kind of cool too. It's an API explorer. So you can see for the schema that I already have and for the CRUD API that I already have, it looks like it's letting me, this is really cool actually, Matt. I haven't seen this right here.
Yeah, it's quite nice because it follows most people that are on the call that are using GraphQL are probably already familiar with the graphical interface. It runs exactly that. The nice part is you're able to build out these queries and then take them in and drop them into your front end client, however you'd like.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's great. Very good.
Oh my God, because the hardest thing I had wasn't necessarily, there were two hard things when I started Dgraph. One was getting my head wrapped around relational database to graph database and those relationships. And it's brilliant. I think the efficiency that a graph database gives both the data modeling and you, right? Yeah. But then I struggled with the GraphQL syntax because the way I write code is I want to copy, I don't use code generation. I'm very much anti-code generation. I don't want to build a struct or type and then generate. I like having the query there because that's the only way to debug things properly. And dude, this was the hardest part of all right here.
Yeah.
So, oh my God. Oh, look at, oh, look at that. I'm gonna hit play. Oh, dude, I'm like dancing, right? I didn't even know this was here.
Yeah, and we've used this heavily. So like I said, when I first got started with Dgraph, relatively new in the GraphQL space as well, this actually helped us out immensely for building out a lot of stuff. So if you're new to GraphQL, this is a great way to play around. And you'll see once we go over to generating the schema and how quickly we can do that, all of that schema as you build it, then it's going to pop up in this API Explorer. It's all done, end to end. You don't need to worry about building your back end out. Basically, you plug in your schema and this automatically shows up.
Wow. You see how I was able to do the alias there too?
Yep.
Didn't get rid of that. So that was kind of cool. So prettify is already pretty. I guess if you copy and paste it. History looks like.
This is good. This here is very important because sometimes what we'll find is we run queries, and then we go, oh crap, I forget exactly how I built that out. Well, all of that query history is going to be here too. So if you ran something really complex and let's just say your browser refreshed on you, you're going to be able to pull that back as part of the history. Now, seems like a finicky thing to be really concerned about, but honestly, there's been times where, I'm working late at night doing a query and then decide to go to bed. And then the next day I come back and say, oh, how did I do that? And instead of having to copy and paste it, I have this query history here.
No, this is huge because I use Insomnia and I save everything because I never know at some point when I'm going to need that query. Now, what is bothering me is this was a copy and I can't delete any of this history. I'm the kind of person that likes to keep it clean. So I'd love to see the ability to kind of clean this up. It looks like it would be endless. So maybe we put that in a note somewhere.
Yeah.
What's Explorer? Oh, that's the Explorer. Okay, Code Explorer. So what is this showing me here? It's showing me, oh, like JavaScript and,
Yep.
oh, I can copy.
And you can say what you want to use. Yeah. JavaScript, fetch, React Apollo. So it'll do that and it'll actually generate that code for you.
This is almost better than documentation, dude. And then if I have some Dgraph QL, I can do that too.
Yeah, and if you're wondering what the difference is between GraphQL and DQL, we do have a blog that'll be coming out shortly that goes way in depth on the two differences between them.
Real quick, right? Like GraphQL is a great, I call it a DSL, but it still wasn't designed for graph databases. And so there are things that you just can't do in GraphQL that you would like to when you get really deep into some of the more core graphing stuff. So DQL is Dgraph, a Dgraph query language, which is modeled after GraphQL, but then gives you access to just more power in terms of the stuff you're doing. Now, the thing is that, and what they're doing to support it is that you still want a unified interface into your database, which I want it to be GraphQL. So one of the things that they're doing, and I can show you this a little bit in the schema, is letting us write custom GraphQL queries that can have embedded inside of it the DQL. I've been waiting to be able to write custom GraphQL mutations. This is one of the big things I keep pushing Daniel and the team on. I need the custom mutation because that's where I can start playing with facets. Like facets is something that's really more DQL, but I have to be able to execute that from a GraphQL mutation. So I've been waiting for that. So what's beautiful about DQL is that you can embed it inside of a GraphQL basically call, and then you get the full power of Dgraph at your fingertips here. I see questions coming in, Matt. So if you see questions and you feel like you can answer them, just say, hey, Bill, I want to answer that. Like Sean's asking, if I need to update my schema for a feature, how does this affect my colleagues? Do we all be working off the same local non-cloud? Right. So, I mean, if you're all working on the same database, then it's going to affect everybody, right? And this is why what you might end up having is a local version of Dgraph running, whether you want to use just Docker straight, Compose, or like I use Kind. And the travel project I have already provides you under Zarf. Matt, you know what the word Zarf means?
I do not know what Zarf means.
This is my favorite word. I needed a word that would fall layering, like at the bottom of this layer of code. And I needed something to put configuration in. So I found this word Zarf. A Zarf is that brown sleeve you put around a hot cup of coffee so you don't burn yourself. It allows you to maintain and hold a container without getting hurt. Now, you can't have a better word than that for your configuration, right?
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's awesome.
So for your local development, I wouldn't be hitting the cloud, right? Because there's even a cost to the kind of doing that. What you want to do is either run your local Dgraph in a Compose, Docker, or like Kubernetes environment. And then what you're doing is you're sharing your schema in a way where everybody can make sure that they're migrating their environment. I like keeping the schema as part of the project, but you know, that really depends on your company and your strategy. So I wouldn't necessarily be using the cloud for your local development. I'd be running a local version of the same version of Dgraph here. I don't know what your feelings are on that, Matt.
Yeah, so we, you know, when I've used it in the past, we've done everything through the cloud environment. This might be something where maybe you launch a couple different backends, all kind of replicated across, and you can play with it that way. For us, what we've done is, and it depends on the size of your team. So what you might look at if you're working in a small startup is maybe just designate 1 or 2 people to make those changes. The cool part about working in the cloud environment is when you do define the schema, you save it and then it instantly launches and goes live. super powerful, but also, again, it may break some stuff if you're not doing that with some type of process. So I think Bill's correct. If you're working with a large team and or you just got a lot of hands on in terms of schema changes and overall just changes within the Dgraph environment, you might want to work locally and then kind of migrate things together. However, the pipeline to move that to from local to cloud, you're going to need to define that still. So you're probably going to have 1 or 2 touch points with folks to move that schema into the cloud. So well, definitely pros and cons.
But Dgraph spent a lot of time in the concept of migrations. You don't need any third-party tools for migrations here. And if you're changing types and they're compatible, Dgraph can handle that for you. If you're changing types that are not compatible, then it's possible that the schema won't even update, right? So, to match point, I think it would be really nice for you to have your local branch change the schema, and then they probably need to be merged as part of a larger merge for your staging environment and production environment. But what's beautiful is you just apply the new schema and the migrations take place, and it's just amazing stuff.
And I think this is also, this whole idea of a changing schema is going to affect you whether you're working in a graph database, document-based NoSQL, or whether you're working in regular SQL, right? It's all about having that process in place to make sure that, as you're developing it, it happens smoothly.
Yep. So what is this data studio here? Because this has
changed. This has changed, and I haven't seen this yet, so I'm excited. We're going to go through it. It is changed from what it used to be. So those of you who used it in the last, let's say, the last 2 weeks prior to now, you would have seen something different where you have all of these types on the side. You click, 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 and it would slowly branch out. This is the new data visualizer here.
Yeah, because these are actual nodes of cities. Miami, New York, Sydney, advisory, which I could have been breaking on the last thing. Wow. So this is interesting. So this is giving me not necessarily a full graphical view, but this is actually pretty nice because it's letting me take a look at the existing data here and drive in. The productivity here is going to be, oh God, this is awesome stuff here. I didn't even know this was here. Okay, places, I have a lot of places. So let me see what happens with places here. So that's
you have a sort on the top, and then you can also, you have all these searches built in as well, which these searches are
based on the indexes that I have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I have this concept of a category, like restaurant. Let's try this real quick. If I do restaurants, there we go. Oh my God, dude, this is, woo, I didn't even know this was here. Now, Lambdas, I don't play with, honestly, maybe you're not going to like me here, but the Lambda system they have is built using Node, which I get, but I'm not a Node person. Like, I want to be able to write Lambdas in Go. But Lambda allows you to run a node, basically a node service within the scope of your compute environment, where you can ask through GraphQL calls to execute these kind of functions, right? Maybe Matt, you can talk a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, I also haven't dug much into the Lambdas portion on the side of Dgraph either. So I think you and I are kind of in the same boat. As I learn more about it, hopefully we'll get some blogs out, we'll get some more stuff. But there definitely is, some things where you might not be able to do it in the conventional sense of, your Dgraph schema and through the exposed APIs. You may want to expand that further without going to an external service. You might not want to run an AWS Lambda and connect to Dgraph. You can do it right within here using Node. So unfortunately, I can't give you much more on it, Bill. As I explore it more and we have more of these calls, I'm really happy to elaborate on it.
Maybe one of these months, we'll just you'll hack and I'll watch a little bit. One of these Lambdas through here. That's kind of cool.
For sure.
Sean's asking about deployments, enforcing consistency. I mean, I think of Dgraph is already a distributed database that can run in like a Kubernetes environment. The idea of the cloud is they're going to manage all of that, make sure you got the right compute resources, memory, all of those things. This is why I really like cloud. I don't want to be an administrator. I don't ever want to install Kubernetes ever in my life from a production standpoint, right? I don't mind locally because I keep it simple. So the idea of the cloud is that you have this kind of around the world data center, though you get to choose those regions. But it's distributed with the architecture that they have. There's a couple of blog posts out there, one written by the founder, Manish, and I've written some smaller ones that go deeper into the architecture. So Sean, what you're gonna do is send me or Matt an email. And I think what we wanna do is send you those documents so you can kind of go a little bit deeper than what we can do in this call. So you can always send me, Matt, maybe drop your email in there too.
Yeah, for sure.
You can send us emails for things that you have questions after as well, and any documentations you want, and we'll get you that stuff. All right. We're not gurus. Like, we've played with it for months, but we're not gurus. But we do have access to the Dgraph engineering team, so we get to get some answers sooner rather than later.
Yep.
But that's why we're here, so you can leverage us as you're building and learning as well. Now, this Ratel is really amazing, and I never thought it worked with my GraphQL schema and data. So this is really cool. I've never ran it like this, but this gives you kind of what we would expect if we're playing with a graph kind of database. But I'm really excited that it works with my GraphQL data in Dgraph, because that's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to see those relationships visually, right? And how they've built this where you can pull it and everything even bounces. It's, you know, it's got a nice UI to it as well.
All right, so we've got that. Now I remember we're going to play with these API keys because I want to deal with that for a second. I do remember I see monitoring, but I guess I haven't set any of that up yet. I remember one call. This is where I was getting confused, where I was able to do all the security stuff, set the ACLs. Maybe that's not released yet here. And I just saw kind of a preview of it. I think maybe like a month ago.
I'm not sure, Bill.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to ask some questions, but I know there's a whole kind of security piece that's coming in that lets you get down to even field level and call level security. I can do some of that in the schema, but it was like all UI driven here. So it's kind of, and I like the idea of having to be able to do backups here as well. Okay, so we've kind of explored a little bit, at least what I can see here. And one of the things I did want to share with you is I do have this database out there already. It would be kind of interesting to just wipe it out and kind of maybe start over and show some of the schema and stuff. And then we'll see what time it is to do more. But if you see here, I've got my Dgraph version, I've got the name, I've got my API keys here, which obviously is hidden. I think I have those hidden in a source file, so I don't have to, but even if everybody saw it, I'll just delete it. Like, world's not going to come to an end. And then here's the GraphQL endpoint right here to this database. So I'm going to have copied that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Insomnia. Now, Insomnia is one of my favorite tools for working with GraphQL and Dgraph. Have you played with Insomnia yet, Matt?
I have not. One thing I do want to mention, though, just before we go into it, is that what you see that Bill already has built probably didn't take Bill that long. So as soon as you pop in, the best part about the Dgraph solution to me is the fact that as you design this schema, the graph database in the back end itself automatically adheres to that. So there's no, as with other solutions, you design your database, then you design your schema, you link up all these types together. You don't need to do that. There's no creating resolvers. There's none of this stuff. It's basically create the schema and away you go. And plugging in auth stuff, as you saw Bill did, also is a cinch to do. I'm using auth 0 on some projects that integrated super nicely. Lots of great blogs out there on the Dgraph side as well that helps you to move that through.
Actually, let's do some crazy stuff here. You already see that I've got my endpoint here. And I've got this admin folder, and it's kind of admin stuff because it has to hit that admin endpoint. I've got headers here that if I show, everybody's going to see my keys, but let's do the following here. I can run this. Notice this isn't really GraphQL, right? It's hitting the, oh wait, that's the wrong. I wonder if I can even do that. Hold on a second here.
Via cloud?
Yeah, I want to hit this against the cloud. This is my endpoint here, right?
Yep.
How does this work actually? So this get schema is pulling a raw kind of feed of the schema that we have, right? Against the cloud. I know that worked. But if I want to drop, will this work? Can I use this to drop the schema that I have?
Let's try it out.
I have no idea if it's going to work. I don't know if that alter endpoint is
It
there.
might be blocked on cloud. I'm not sure. We'll have to check it out and see.
Yeah, access denied. So then how would I, all right, these are questions that we're going to be writing down. If I wanted to drop my entire schema, I wouldn't, oh, no, download drop. You think
Drop data, and then if you want, Bill, if you want my simple-minded way of doing it, Control A, delete, deploy would wipe it. I know if you want to do it through an API, it's going to be different.
Really? All right,
Yeah.
hold on. Well, to create the schema, I should be able to do this, right? I mean, I should be able to create the schema against the cloud here. So what you're telling me here is, let me do the following here. Let me make a duplicate of this.
You're taking a different approach than I normally would. That's why I'm not.
I'm a programmer, I think, and sometimes I want to do things as a programmer, right?
Yeah.
But what you're kind of telling me, interestingly enough, let me get rid of. I'm trying to figure out where this begins and ends. This is the other fun part here, right? Let's see, I want to get rid of this type. That's this, and that's this. What if I wanted to set the schema? Hold on a second here. My brain isn't working here. Where is the closing part of this parenthesis here? So here's a type, right, that I was adding when I was.
I think you're missing a parenthesis because if you look at your top, if you look at line 1, you'll see that you got a squiggly under the first one. So maybe there's no matching.
Oh, because this is a literal string here.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is this. If I were to run this, this would be like killing the schema.
It might work.
I don't know what's going to happen. No.
Access.
So I know I can do it in, oh, maybe access is denied because I don't have the headers set.
That could be it too. Yeah.
Oh, I bet you. Okay. Unfortunately, then I'm going to have to give up my goods and then we'll delete those keys. So my guess is I need to set this X auth token on the drop. Let's try. All right, X auth token. I bet you that's why. Okay, so
Yeah, there we go.
it was because I didn't have my token there, which makes me feel better. So let me just delete that one then. I don't need it. All right, so how come that delete didn't work? Do I have to? All right, whatever. We'll keep moving on. Okay, so then if we come back to the create, okay, so this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see what would happen now that I issued that drop command. So I just told the system to drop my entire schema, right? Marnie, I don't know what the best client yet to use for Flutter and Dart is, but we'll work with you to figure that out, I promise. So this is actually what I was interested in now, right? I'm gonna refresh this, and yeah, sure enough, the schema is gone. Okay, that's kind of cool, right? So no more Data Studio, no more schema. You know what would be really nice is, oh, I could put the schema in here and deploy it. Oh, I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I still do everything in code, and I still want to.
That's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at. Because the thing is, especially if you're just, let's say you have an existing schema that you want to bring over to Dgraph, but you don't want to set up all these API calls just to POC it quickly. Copy, paste, boom, in, and then you're going to be working away in Dgraph with those already generated.
So I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy my GraphQL schema out of the project, which is really where it's executed against, now that I see this. And I'm going to come in here, and now I understand what you were saying. Interesting. So I'm going to see if this works, actually. This is kind of cool. But for those of you that are looking at this maybe a little bit for the first time, and I want to see if this works here. What does this switch to UI mode? Too many buttons I want to try out. Okay, so in fact, let me get rid of the user stuff for now. But you can see here a little bit that I've got some syntax around being able to apply some authentication to the different operations you can do against the user node. But one of the things I saw in one of the last demos was I won't need to do this anymore in my schema because I can apply it here if you're managing your entire schema here in the UI, which isn't necessarily bad maybe for, I don't know. This brings up a whole sort of conversations around that. Let's not get into that. But I do have the ability at the schema level to define the different roles a user has to have. And that all uses JSON web tokens and stuff. But let's just get rid of that for a second. Yeah, why not? I want to see if it works actually.
Yeah, let's try it out.
Here's my city that we saw some data for. We can see it's, and I love about GraphQL that it's all type-based, so it feels like code. The ACLs, from my understanding, Rick, are, yeah, I don't know if I have that. I don't know if that's account-based or enterprise-based, or that's a great question.
That is a good
question. Write that one down if we don't have an answer. We'll get an answer to Rick. That stuff is really new. So I haven't been able to play with it. I've been waiting to be able to play with it. All that stuff's coming now.
Yeah, and I haven't touched it yet either.
Yeah, but we're going to play with it. We'll have answers for you.
Yep.
So there's my city. We saw that. There's my advisory data for a city. And you can see I have the kind of inverse relationships going on there. Places, and you can see I have the search indexes that came up in the UI as well. So that's kind of cool. You can set addresses into a variable. Oh, nice. Well, yeah, I'm new to Insomnia too, so that's good stuff. And then I have the weather. Now, here is where we start talking about some of the custom queries. Like I have this one. In the last workshop I did, we actually hacked this out on the fly to be able to hit a GraphQL endpoint to then hit a web service that I had running in the background that performed basically an HTTP post call. So we had that. This isn't going to work, so I have to get rid of it. This is user add rating. This is where I'm trying to play with custom DGraphQL here, except I really want to do a mutation, and I'm kind of trying to put it inside of query. And it will compile, but I'm struggling around return types right now. So but this is how you could do DQL mutations. And once we can put it under a mutation, you know. So I'm definitely waiting on some of that. Maybe I just got to get rid of that here because that's not going to work out very well. And then down here, I have authorization stuff, which I'm not going to add here. So you know what? I think I'm going to get rid of. No, I guess we can leave user. And I have the enum. Let me see if this actually works. I don't know if I would want to do this from a production standpoint, only because I feel like it has to be programmed. But maybe for small projects.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's obviously good as you're moving through your development cycle to make sure this stuff's automated, especially from a source control perspective. But you know, when you're first getting started with it and you want to test it out, it's great to show how easy it is to just pop into the UI, take your schema, dump it, away you go. And the same thing, if you come across, you're new to GraphQL, maybe you're playing with, you know, Apollo client or something like that, and you have an example where it shows the schema, you can take that schema, drop it in here, and it's going to actually already create those endpoints for you. So, I mean, it kind of works both ways.
Yeah, that's the cool part. With this ID field in every node, I get a free CRUD API for both querying and yeah. So let me hit the deploy button because I'm super interested if this ends up working. This will really help, especially when you're starting out and you're just trying to get some things working. Because I had to spend a lot of time building the travel project to deal with this sort of stuff, which I would have loved to put in the back. Okay, so it doesn't like my.
It doesn't like your query. It doesn't like your query. Yeah.
It doesn't like my custom.
Yeah.
Sort of query here. So in order to not slow us down here, let's just get rid of that for now. And then we can look at some of that stuff later. Maybe that's not supported yet in the version. Maybe that's not supported in the cloud version yet, the custom. Yeah, because you'd have to make sure that database could access, in this case, public endpoints. There's a whole networking that has to go on with that. But
you could create that within your API Explorer. You could create that as well there, and then it would be exposed.
Okay, so look, I just was able to create at least this part of the schema, right? So now I can go into the API Explorer and I see essentially the API again that got built to get query. Now I don't see the mutation.
Yeah, so go down to the bottom. Go down to the bottom, that drop down. Yeah, and then do the plus.
I wish that was on the top.
Yeah, do the plus. This fits the regular graphical interface that most people would see. Be at the bottom. Whether you've used Azura or you've used another similar tool, you'll see the same type of layout with the mutation stuff at the bottom.
I see. And now I can do these mutations here.
It makes the mutations much easier because I find that's something that queries tended to be relatively easy to get my head wrapped around. Mutations tend to be just a little more involved. This is a great way to build them out very quickly.
Okay, so now we have a schema. I don't have any data, obviously, but we got the schema back in. And now what we can do is use that API Explorer to do this again, right? So what you're saying is say mutation and add. I added the mutation here. Now, oh my God, you have no idea. Because if I go back into Insomnia, I have my, what do I have here? I must have an add user or something here. I made everything larger, so I don't. Let me see. No, that's not closing it. Oh, query. I didn't do an add here on this cloud one. Maybe I'll go to my workshop. Let me see, like add city. Okay. So this is the add city mutation, right? Like I had to struggle all the time to figure out how to write these by hand.
Yep.
Let me see now. And this has the support for the upsert, which the cloud I don't think has support for yet. Let's see, add city. No, I don't see that as an option just yet, right? But I'm waiting for that. I really want that to happen. So this is kind of cool because I can say now, oh man, dude. I mean, I could just copy that in as is, right?
Yep.
And then this is what the name that we're going to be using here in the Explorer.
Yep.
Because I don't really give these mutations a name in code.
Your name will actually be the name. So that's a required field. Yeah. So it'd be in Miami. And then, so the cool part about this is, let's say you build this out and then you can run it by pushing the play button.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add that because I don't care about the places just yet. Cool. And then I can get back the ID, which I want. So I hit play. Yep. There it is, ID 754.
And if you liked that, if you said, okay, cool, this is what I generally do, is I'll build my mutations out here, and then I will go to the code exporter, and that's when I'll grab it for the Apollo React client.
Yeah, and I can even do that here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that will run. And that's what I was doing during development was hand coding them here. And then I was coming into, let's say, the project, like data city, and then I hard code them here. It's the same practice, but man, I was spending so much time trying to learn the syntax. For everybody who's watching, you have no idea the gift that Dgraph kind of just gave you here with this. And even like this is a browser-based app too. So in the travel UI, I have my queries here and I do the same thing. So the ability, this is going to make you be able to run really, 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 really fast. Oh my God. Like, I guess I still need Insomnia for the local work, but the ability to even just, my brain is almost exploding here thinking I might even want a cloud environment as part of the development process, just to have access to this tooling. Yeah. Kind of get everything in set and then kind of start to move things. Eventually, you probably spend more time on the code side than this, but anytime you're doing something new, oh my God, dude, this is
You know
just
what else? You know what else I really like about it, Bill, is the fact that when it's this simple to use, you may have less technical people on your team that you can then say to them. They might say, hey, how do I retrieve this data? You can give them access to this, give them a very brief tutorial on how to do it, and then they can start doing queries without having to worry about how to use Insomnia, Postman, how to figure this stuff out. A lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. So I think from a non-technical perspective, it also brings a lot of value as well.
You're absolutely right, because I think one of the big wins that Dgraph was trying to provide was that the front-end developers, whether they're browser-based like this, Flutter, things like that, could execute GraphQL directly against DBase instead of a REST API.
Yeah.
But then, two issues come up when I tell people how productive can the front-end team be by having access to a CRUD-based API out of the box. They don't have to wait on me to build a REST API. They don't have to wait on me on what they need. They can get all the data they need. And then two things always pop up. One is, well, how are they going to learn how to write these queries and get to the data that they want, right? And it's a valid point. Well, Dgraph just solved that problem, because now I can easily point the front end team to a cloud environment here with the schema and tell them, do it yourself. Here, figure out the queries you need, right? We just have to save some data in there. So that's brilliant. The other question that comes up, which is interesting, is do you really want these queries in the front end where maybe they're not so secure? Maybe you still want to put a REST-based API behind it. But I think the new security features with the ACLs and some of the other auths solves that problem too, because you can just come in. Eventually, you'll be able to come in here and say, even though they're asking for the named field, they don't have access to that field based on their tokens and stuff. This also lends itself, I think, to I remember in the 90s, there was always a database person whose job it was to really kind of help you with these queries, make sure they ran efficiently, did all that. It almost allows that position to exist again. You could have that person on your team that even the front end devs or the back end devs can use to help with this. And now it's a copy and paste, which goes, what I love about this the most is it goes back to what I push every single time. Stop with the code gen, stop with the code gen. I have two philosophies here that are so important. One, we make things easy to understand, not easy to do. And when the queries are hard-coded like this, or they're hard-coded like this, it's easy to understand. And fixing problems are isolated to that. Here's the other thing that I have a problem with like code gen related stuff. When we're talking about ORMs, when you're trying to generate GraphQL from types. Those types of systems, the code generation, the ORMs, they make the easy things easier, but they make the hard things impossible. Impossible. And just,
Absolutely.
I don't want people getting stuck suddenly that they can't fix a problem or they can't use the tooling because they don't get to see the queries here. So I'm going to push everybody on this call again. This is a gift to be able to generate the query. Work on your code embedding these queries in one way or another so you can manage this, copy and paste it, fix it.
Yeah, and hopefully what you'll see when you start to look at how Dgraph might fit in your solution is the fact that, like Bill said, there's no code gen. So there's a lot of tools out there which, they do rely heavily on code gen, whether you're looking at GraphQL or RESTful. There's a lot of code gen tools. And like you said, it makes the easy things easy, but the hard things, sometimes, they are impossible. And if you look at how simple it is, think about how big your backend is. If you're a front-end developer, or the front end is really what's probably going to drive your product to actually be able to make money or gain adoption. The back end is sometimes a consequence of being able to get the front end to run. And you're eliminating that back end development here. And not from a code gen perspective. You're basically giving yourself exactly what you need to power that front end journey. And you can really expedite how quickly you can create apps, whether you're a large enterprise or whether, like myself, or even like Bill, when we're tinkering around, it's great to be able to get this stuff working in a matter of minutes.
I agree. The productivity, I didn't even know this stuff existed. I am like completely shocked. Now, if you see me struggle here, I asked them to create a subdomain to get to the Discord forum, and I don't remember what it is, which is driving me crazy. Discuss graph. Do you remember I asked them to create a subdomain to get to this thing.
Zenny might have an idea.
I
How to
think
get
this is it here, discuss. But I would have swore I asked them to write discuss. Oh, maybe the cloud was the other one. I don't remember. I'm gonna have to ask Daniel, but somebody was asking about how to get to the forum.
Okay, yeah, the forum is discuss. Yep. And you'll see, you'll see everything and everything there. And we do have a whole team that monitors that. So turnaround tends to be pretty quick, and we like to give very thorough answers there.
And the engineers are here, so they're really good at getting you answers. But I'm going to tell you this, and because Matt's now here on this call, if you ever have a bad experience on the forum with the community or with an engineer, or you don't feel like you're getting what you need, you ought to reach out to Matt.
Yeah.
Matt's here to kind of help you navigate that. And there are times, where you might be having a tough day because you're really struggling. An engineer could be having a tough day because they're struggling with stuff. And so what we're going to do is talk about that. So when you're really struggling and the form's not working and the documentation's not working, and just you reach out to Matt. You can also reach out to me. I mean, we're here to kind of help you, and we may not have the answer right away, but we'll get answers. Matt has dropped his email address there.
See, I dropped it to panelists. There we go. Panelists and attendees. There we go.
Oh, I keep putting it in the wrong place too, didn't I? Panelists, I keep dealing with it.
There we go.
My email is bill@ardenlabs.com. I'm on Twitter at goandgo.dotnet because I focus a lot on Go. And then I'm on the Go for Slack if you're around there. Dgraph didn't want to manage Slack anymore, so they went to the forum, and that's why everybody's there and they're really responsive. Matt is there. Matt, do you have a Twitter account too?
I'm slowly revamping the Twitter.
Mm.
I'm getting there. So next call, hopefully I'll have it all up and going. I'm more of a LinkedIn guy. I know it's
LinkedIn, huh?
Yeah, and feel free to connect with me there. I'm always sharing, Dgraph related stuff and just general Graphql related stuff as well.
I don't know what BitClout is. Have you heard of BitClout? Like, I don't really need another.
BitClout.
Oh, it's Bitcoin stuff, huh? The crypto social network. Interesting. I'll have to look into that more.
Yeah.
All right, so this is all I've got. There's really like 10 minutes left, but I don't think there's anything more I could. The only other thing I want to share with you is, once again, I've got the Dgraph travel project. Maybe Matt, what we should do one day too is show this off again for people who are writing code in Go. I think there's some aspects of this that could help others in different languages, but I've got to sit and show Matt this as well. I haven't really, you know what? I got 10 minutes. So let's do this because this could be just really quick in the last 2 minutes here. Let me build this code and see if it runs. So you can also kind of get a look at that kind of UI. Right now, what it's doing is building containers for the different services here. Everything runs in Kubernetes. And you got to get a general sense of the UI as well here for our locals. So everything's been built. I have a make kind up command. I also have a nice wiki that walks you through all this kind of stuff. If you're a Go developer looking for code, if you're a kind of UI browser developer looking for code, all that kind of, I am not a front end dev though. Like, I do the bare minimum to get things up and running. But I think it's a really nice base project for all these things. So while we got the last 8 minutes here, let's just bring it up and everybody can kind of see what this travel project can give you. I haven't run Kubernetes in a bit, so sometimes that control plane happens like this, and sometimes it takes a little longer. But I try to do everything in Kubernetes because it seems to be the platform today for deploying code.
I'm just smiling because I try to steer away from it as much as I can.
You can't avoid it. Well, if you have really small projects, just using Docker and deploying like that is fine. Compose is really not a bad environment here. But, I have to teach this stuff. And so we do that. And so, okay, so our Kubernetes environment will be up in one more second. I'm going to do a make kind services. I know I'm not explaining this, and that's fine. What's important right now is that we just walk through these steps. This is the last piece. This will bring up our dgraph and our services that we wrote here in Go. Make kind status, and we can see here that the alpha and the 0 are pending. It's a simple environment, right? It's not this multi-clustered environment. 1, 0, 1 alpha. And the travel service, which presents that UI that I'm going to share with you. We'll have to get some data in the database, though.
And Bill, for those who are unfamiliar with the 0 and alpha schematic, alpha is where the data is going to live, and 0 is kind of that control plane, right?
Yes, alphas are where the data gets sharded across, and 0 is the control plane that tells figures out where the data is. Yeah, absolutely right. All right, so our database is coming up. Okay, our database is running, brilliant. And in fact, I should be able to do let's just do real quick, make kind logs, just to see if we have, okay, we're up and running there. Brilliant. So now what I have to do is I'm going to source this environment with some keys so I can then run a make command called seed. What that should do now is create the schema against my local database and start dumping data into the cities and advisories and the weather, some of the schema that we saw on this call. It makes real API calls to like Google APIs, so you need those keys. It's a bummer. I've talked to Google a billion times. How can I get a key that nobody can abuse, but people don't have to register to get an app running? It's like the biggest struggle. Okay, so this is the cool part now. We've got our local database up and running. The schema's set. The data is loaded. I can do make browse. And there's a little UI that I wrote. It looks like the other environment that Dgraph.
Looks like Rattle, yeah.
Not bad, huh? Especially for a guy who can't write UIs here. Let's refresh that again. Now, what's cool about the UI that I built here is you can click on these nodes and we can see the data. You can also see the query that I execute from the browser side to get to that, and the response, the raw response. And I've got the kind of schema, well, I used to have the schema here in a pretty print, so I don't know what's happening there. I'll have to look. And you can also kind of change the different cities. The other thing that I added was the idea of adding a new city, and that uses a custom GraphQL function that hits another service. So I can add a new city into this. And the thing I'm working on now, Matt, is this idea of a facet. So what I want to do is there's an edge, right, between a place, and I'm not representing the edge perfectly here, but there's an edge between a place. Actually, I'm creating edges now between places and users. And so I'm assuming right now I'm the user that's logged in.
Yeah.
And the idea is I want to be able to rate my experience at this place. I give it so many stars. But instead of having another node, like in a relational database where we'd have the user ID and the place ID and the number of stars, I want to apply the 4 stars on the edge.
Ah, okay, cool. So instead of having a joint, instead of having a union or a join table, you want to just put it on the edge.
Yeah, there'd be an edge between me and that place, and on the edge, the data would be the 4 stars. But I need DQL to do that, and I'm waiting for the custom mutations. But I started playing a little bit with my UI, so I'm going to get back to that next month, and then we'll see data on the edges, right? And how to query some of that stuff, and maybe we'll end up, once we can do custom mutations, we can have a call 1 month just on that alone. But this is the only thing you really have to do to get this app up and running is get a Google Map key, just so you can load some data up. But you can see some of the fun things that you can do. And to Marty out there that Marnie that we've been talking to, apologize for not saying your name correctly, Marnie. I would love to see a Flutter app hit this as the UI as well, right? with the data, the schema, everything's kind of here. It might be a fun project for you to start with, where you can start already just having a database that's loaded with data that you can do anything, right? I mean, React Native is JavaScript, right? And if you look here, I'm using JavaScript. I just decided to use jQuery because I'm not a front-end dev and I'm not that experienced. But you have all this code that you can kind of steal from as well, even if you're doing React Native or anything else. But that's the idea. And Matt and I will continue to either enhance and build new projects over time to support everybody. So I think our hour is up, and we got to show. I don't know about everybody else, but I learned a bunch today about that UI and how now more productive I'm going to be. And listen to me, I'm being honest with everybody that's watching. This is not planned. I'm not like, this isn't like, I really didn't know that any of that was there until today.
Yeah, and that's the first time that I've also seen that new data visualizer as well. So very, very good stuff going on over here at Dgraph, especially as we're really building out our cloud capabilities.
And I promise you, when Matt and I are doing these every month, that nothing is super planned. We have some roadmap, we may have some code, but at the end of the day, we really want everyone else to kind of drive some of this stuff. And now we've got some ideas for some future months as well. You have our contact information. So if we didn't answer your question today, or you have other questions, email Matt or email me, and we'll do our best. If you want to play with the service project and you need a little more help getting started, email me. I'll jump on a Zoom or a Meet, and we'll get it done.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you very much for facilitating this today. You did a wonderful job, and just like everyone else on the call, I'm sure that we've all learned lots.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. So I don't know if Xenia is still around. She wants to stop this recording, but we're going to head out. Everybody have a great day, great weekend. Learn some Dgraph, learn some GraphQL, and I think you're going to really be happy with trying to integrate some of the stuff into your solutions. I know I am. All right.